Come to order. I'll give you some time to sit down. Welcome to the Catholic Cathedral. This is the most amazing place. Some of you who haven't ever seen it should go look at it from the inside. It looks like hell from outside, but from inside, it's a startlingly good architectural work. And it's quite interesting. Our director, Peter Kaufman, is on the committee that runs the cathedral. And if you want to be buried in the same column with the ashes of Gregory Peck, he'll arrange it for $100,000. This is a very commercial crowd. You can't even die without paying. Okay, I have a script I'm going to go through, and after we're through this script, which takes care of the formal business of the meeting, we'll answer questions in the usual way, after one brief little explanation from the chairman. I want to first introduce the people who are here. I'm Charlie Munger, chairman, and the other officers are Rick Guerin, vice chairman, wave Rick. Jerry Salzman, who really runs the place. Peter Kaufman, who many of you know. I can't read very well, but that's a problem of age. Gary Wilcox, and Mary Conlon, our new director. Michelle Stevens, vice president of the Daily Journal. I'm going to wave Michelle. Michelle is the one that ran the foreclosure notice business when we made all the money. She is a hero around here. Tutu, this is our main financial accountant. Mary Jo Rodriguez, who's a pillar of the place. And Danny Manny DeManey, vice president of the Journal Technologies. Ellen Ireland, who's been here forever and is another pillar of the place. Ernest Miranda, Andy Richardson, Martin Casas, and Scott Milner. And these are our accountants. And having fired two previous accountants, we really love these. Accounting, by the way, is really difficult now. It's not an easy profession, particularly in a place like this. And I have the feeling that whoever is auditing Boeing this year is earning his money. Can you imagine how hard that would be to do? All right, we'll now proceed to the formal business of the meeting and then go on to the questions. If anybody has a proxy they haven't delivered, ignore it because we got enough proxies anyway. Ellen, will you please report the number of shares presented at the meeting?
On December 20th, 2019, the record date fixed by the Board of Directors for determining the shareholders entitled to vote today, there were 1,380,746 shares of common stock of the corporation outstanding. I have a list of the shareholders who were of record as of that date, certified by the corporation's transfer agent, Equinity Trust Company. I also have an affidavit certifying the completion of the mailing of the notice of this meeting, the proxy card, and the 2019 annual report, along with a prepaid postage return envelope to the shareholders. The total number of shares represented in person or by proxy at this meeting is 1,198,911, which is more than a majority of voting power of all outstanding common stock of the corporation, and the meeting may proceed. I will attach the affidavits to the meeting minutes and have a copy of the minutes of the last annual meeting.
Thank you. We will now proceed to the individual items. The first order of business is the election of the board of directors. We have enough proxies to elect all the directors whom we've named. I hereby declare them elected. The number of shares voting in favor of the directors is rather interesting. I do not lead the list. And the single most useful person in the place, who's Salzman, has the lowest number of votes. But I'm fighting to do as well as he does. At any rate, we all got practically the same number of votes. It's rather interesting. Some previous occasion, Price Waterhouse had fired somebody, and so somebody came to the meeting and had a long diatribe against Price Waterhouse, our auditor. It was very humorous. Annual meetings are very peculiar in America. And, of course, we now have the chief shareholder in practically every big company in America is some index fund. And it's weird that the voting power of America goes to a bunch of index fund operators. Nobody planned it. It just happened. And God knows what the consequences will be. All right, the second proposal is the ratification of the selection of the independent public accountants. And again, we have proxies for that, and that has just passed. The audit committee of the board of directors have selected Scott Milner to be the accountants, and we need a ratification of that. And again, we have enough proxies, and that passes. A third proposal is to approve the amendment to the company's articles of incorporation to adopt a majority vote standard for election of the directors. The state of California asked us to pass this, and so we're passing it. And that has just passed a reason of use of all the proxies. There requires I don't need to go into the exact numbers of shares. The fourth proposal, that proposal is approved, the one that the California asked us to pass. That's passing all over America. God knows what it does. Not much, I think. Fourth proposal concerns the advisory vote on what Jerry's salary, is that it? No, yeah. And that also passes. If there ever is anybody who earns his pay around here, it's Jerry. The approval requires a vote. Well, that's done. And I think I'm coming to an adjournment. Oh, yes. We now need a motion to adjourn the meeting and go on to the questioning. Is there a second? All in favor? We are adjourned. I will discuss briefly the state of affairs that's reflected in our reports, and then I will take questions. This company, of course, started as a public notice rag, which made money by doing public notices, and it morphed into a very successful legal daily newspaper, which had a monopoly on publishing the opinions of all the appellate courts in California, and every law firm had to buy it. And it did a lot of other useful things and was a small but very profitable paper occupying an ideal niche. many of the newspapers in America had similar niches where they just made regular, substantial profits, and very easy, simple business to run. Of course, what's happened is that technological change is destroying the daily newspapers in America, including the little ones like ours. The revenue goes away and the expenses remain, and they're all dying. Berkshire Hathaway owns about 100 of them, and the truth of the matter is they're all going to die, and there's nothing that can be done with good management to save them. And it's a sad thing because those newspapers were an accidental part of the government. They called them the fourth estate. And each one had come into being sort of by accident of capitalism without any planning by the founding fathers. And the people who ran them became very powerful people due to two great American institutions. One is nepotism and the other is monopoly. And all those nepotistic monopolists, many of whom drank too much, actually morphed into a function where they were more useful than our legislators. And of course, we're losing them all. And what we get is these opinion services on TV that everybody watches, where everybody believes some ridiculous version of things that's slanted as much as anybody could. And it's not a good thing in America that we lose Newsweek, Time Magazine, and all of our daily newspapers and get back Rush Limbaugh or Andy's ilk on the other side. But that's what's happened. And it's a sad thing. Nobody planned that we had a fourth estate that was really a branch of the government that worked very well for us and that took pride in being accurate and so on. And nobody planned that it would go away. It just happened. Now, the Daily Journal Corporation, strangely, is not going to disappear. If all of our business fails, we still have a lot of marketable securities. So we're going to do better than these other newspapers. I'm not counting the ones like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. There are a few that will survive no matter what, but basically they're all going away. And the Daily Journal is not going to go away and leave the shareholders with nothing because of our big marketable securities. We also have a second business which we're trying to use to replace the economic strength of the newspaper that is imperiled, and that's Journal Technologies. And that is a computer software business that helps courts and government agencies replace human error-prone, inefficient procedures with simpler and better procedures run by software. That is a very difficult business. Ordinary software, like the software a teacher uses to help teach a class, or the software that's used in accounting if you're a dealer in Chevrolets or something, that stuff is a gold mine because it's just standard and you crank it out and everybody uses it and it's efficient. What we're doing is servicing all these government departments of a lot of different kinds, and they all have special requirements, and they're almost all quite bureaucratic, and they're also political, and it takes forever, and they're full of lawyers and consultants, the RFP process. So it's a branch of the software business that is intrinsically very, very difficult, where everything takes forever, is very hard to do, and so on. You can say, well, if that's and a lot of people just totally avoid it for that reason. They just want to crank out a few printed bits of software or distribute it on the cloud, whatever they do, and count the money. And of course, we're in a business where we need armies of people to help all these courts all over the world automate probation officing work or court filings and so on. And it's all going to happen. So all this automation and effective software is going to happen, but it's unbelievably difficult. An RFP involving a government and a bunch of consultants is intrinsically very, very difficult. And you have to keep good nature, and you have to have huge patience, and you have to have huge talent, and you have to just keep rolling with it. And then the money comes in very slowly and has more bureaucracy. It's very, very difficult. In spite of all those difficulties and the fact that everybody at the very top of this company is very old, we've done fairly well. And don't ask me why, it was kind of a miracle. But a lot was done right just to make it to our present state. And it's a big market, but it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fast. And on the other hand, we all like the customers. I've fallen in love with the government of Australia. They're just such nice people, and I think it's wonderful that Australia wants automated courts. And I think it's wonderful they're smart enough to hire us. Imagine hiring the little Daily Journal company to run the courts of Australia. And my guess is all going to work for them and for us. It's a miracle they figured out that this little company would be a pretty safe choice. I think part of the reason we've been successful is so many of our competitors are so awful. So we don't deserve as much credit as we're claiming. But it's going to take a long, long time, and it's an everlasting struggle. It's kind of fun to watch because we have the most unlikely cast of characters, and a lot of them are quite successful. Jerry just made a big report to the board of directors. It's just amazing the goodwill with which the people attack this very difficult work and just keep everlastingly at it. And they have troubles where they go around. If somebody goes crazy, they tell them no. There are a million opportunities to do this wrong. But I think it's all going to happen. I think we may end up with a big share of it. But when it's all done, you shareholders will need a lot of patience. It's really hard. This is not the easy part of the software business. This is more like trying to create another Price Waterhouse. That would be difficult, and this is difficult. And of course, we can't guarantee that we will succeed, but I consider it likely. I just think it'll be slow and awful. I don't anticipate any really easy times for a long time, but I suspect it'll keep growing. Jerry, why don't you, how well do you think we're going to do in the next 2 or 3 years? Where's Jerry? Yeah. I'm blind in my left eye, so that...
We certainly devoted a lot of energy and resources to journal technology. We have approximately 250 employees in journal technology, and we have offices here in Los Angeles, obviously, in Corona, because we acquired a company in 2013 with an office in Corona, California. We have an office in Logan, Utah, where we acquired a company there in 2013. And we have an office in Denver because our original interest in this system of serving courts started because of our interest in providing or seeing that the Court of Los Angeles, the largest in the United States at least, has sufficient resources in a service provider. That's how we got involved in 1999. And we are seeing lots of changes. You take, for example, in Los Angeles. Los Angeles now uses our system to do electronic filing. Attorneys do the filing electronically. If you go down to the courts in Los Angeles where people used to have to stand in line or have a service provider stand in line on behalf of the lawyers, there's nobody there. Also, in conjunction with LA, we were able to enable lawyers to determine when they would come to court and see the judge. So attorneys are now setting their own schedule, and that reduces some of the personnel requirements at the court. These are some of the innovations that are taking place. And if, for example, you get a traffic ticket in Riverside, you're using our system to pay for that. So drive fast through Riverside. And we've made some good inroads into other California courts. We have one basic system, and we have 3, 4, or 5 different configurations of the system, one for courts, one for public defenders, one for district attorneys, and one for probation officers. So we have to only modify one system and make sure the configuration of the main system is appropriate for other agencies. This is a big advantage when we come to the point of doing installations. And Charlie mentioned the people or the projects in Australia, the government of Australia. We now have 4, 5, 6, or 7 people down in Australia, and we work for the state of South Australia and Victoria at the present time, which is Melbourne. So we have most of the courts. We have all the courts in those 2 states, and they range from mineral courts to other types of courts that we sometimes don't see here. Los Angeles in California, in each county, only has 1 court. If you went to other states, you'd find that there was a probate court, a civil court, a family law court. It just goes on and on and on. And in California, they're much more efficient than you can imagine when it comes to, by comparison, where they have all the administrators, 4 or 5 administrators, and separate systems and separate IT departments. Very inefficient. That's what we are confronted with all the time. As we move forward, the financial results will depend upon the number of users in these various justice agencies. Yes, we do get implementation fees, but we can only take that into income when everything is delivered. And so we focus on trying to get to the point where everything is delivered, then we can take it into income and reflect it in the financial statements.
This is a very important thing that everybody in this room should understand. We have no simple way of just counting up hours and sending little invoices to the government. That's what most consultants like to do, is bill hours. And we don't get the right to collect money until the thing works. And we do that on purpose. It reminds me of one of my favorite tales, which really happened. When I was young, a lot of the earth moving was not done with bulldozers. It was done by teams of mules who were guided by contractors who ran these mule teams and their big plows and there was a Latino contractor who had an enormous number of mules. And when the war came, the big builder called him and said, I've got a cost-plus contract with the government. I'm going to make you cost-plus. I want your mules to start tomorrow morning on this big project. Cost-plus. Cost-plus percentage of cost. And this Latino said, oh, no, he said, I can't do that. And he says, why not? He said, well, I get business all these years because I'm so efficient. And he said, when I take a cost-plus contract, even my mules seem to know it, and they all go to hell. And that's the Daily Journal's policy. We're trying to avoid deteriorating by taking this awful contracting course. And we're trying to be good like that Latino contractor. And my guess is it's going to work, but you have to be very cheerful to take it because it's agony. I can't tell you how the people like Microsoft and Google and so forth, they don't want our branch of the software business. I kind of like it. Peter kind of likes it because he senses that, Peter Kaufman, raise your hand. Peter likes it difficult if he thinks he will keep it forever once he gets it. And that's our system. But I certainly can't guarantee it's going to work. It's a lot of very difficult work. And I would like to tell you we're just ass deep in talent. And we have 4 qualified people for every job. We're just the opposite. We're like a bunch of one-armed paper hangers working away at this stuff, and so far it's working. And, of course, what's happened in America, of course, is that software has grown enormously. If you take every big college in the engineering department, the most popular course is computer science. And if you go into venture capital, the most popular investment is some kind of software. And I do not find venture capital's backing of software companies pretty because there's just so much of it. And there's some wretched excess and folly and high prices and so on. It's not a scene that attracts a normal Berkshire Hathaway type. I'm not saying it won't work for a great many of them very well, but there's also going to be a lot of casualties. And I don't like it when bad stuff comes in. I don't like it when investment bankers talk about EBITDA, which I translate as bullshit earnings. and I don't like all this talking about J curves and all these private sales of software companies from one venture capital to another at markups. It looks like a daisy chain to me. So I think there's a lot of wretched excess in it. But it reflects an underlying sound development, which is this huge growth of software changing the technology of the world. But it's going to have some unpleasant consequences because there's so much wretched excess in it. And I bet, I don't know what, around this room, almost everybody has somebody in software in the family. I've got 2 people in private equity in my family. And private equity has grown into the trillions. And, of course, it's a very peculiar development because there's a lot of promotion, a lot of crazy buying. It's what I call fee-driven buying, much of it, where people are buying things to get the fees. I'm not used to that. I buy things because they're going to work for me for the long pull. As the owner, I'm not thinking about scraping fees off them on the way. It's just a very different. It makes me very nervous to have all this fee-driven buying, and whenever they're successful, they just raise a fund that's twice as big as the last one, and throw more money at more deals, and of course, with more money and more overhead, it's an ending demand for fees. But will the world provide wonderful results for all these people? The answer is no, it won't. It's going to be a lot of tragedy. And in the past, the people who did well in venture capital were the clients of Sequoia, which is one of the best venture firms that ever existed in the history of the earth. But there aren't that many Sequoias, and Sequoia had such a wonderful record because it kept itself small. And now everybody is trying to be enormously large and to grow enormously and hire more and more people. collect more and more fees, and it's weird, and it's not going to work perfectly. And I am trying to give you the same service my old Harvard law professor gave me when he said, "Tell me what your problem is, and I'll try and make it more difficult for you." By the way, the guy that told me that was doing me a favor. It's a pretty good way to proceed. I have this saying, a problem thoroughly understood is half solved. It's hard to understand it well. And well, I guess that's enough for the Daily Journal. You're in for a long, difficult ride. And not only that, the damn leaders look like an old people's home. I'm 96. Rick is 90. Our CEO is 80. I mean, if you're not decrepit, you don't belong here. And I think we will gradually work things out in spite of this aged group of directors. After all, we've got a young man like Wilcox who's past retirement age. And of course, we've got a new director, Mary Conlon, who put up here partly to make the rest of us look good, or bad, rather. But it is all these odd results in capitalism. It is peculiar that one little newspaper is full of marketable securities, and it's probably not dying, and it may actually succeed in a business none of the people understood. None of the people I've named is a computer software engineer. And it's weird. And yet you people who come from all over the world to this place, you're as nutty as we are. And if you ask me, I think it's slightly more likely to work than not work. And it's a very good thing to be doing. The world needs what we're trying to do. And we're trying to reward the right people and really trying to serve the customers. When it comes to customers, my model, my ambition is to be as close to Costco as I can possibly be. I've never been associated with a company that works harder than Costco to make sure the customers are served well. I mean, I just love success that occurs that way. And I hate success where you're deliberately trying to cheat people or sell them something that's not good for them, like gambling service in Las Vegas. By the way, I'm not trying to irritate our customers in Las Vegas. I'm doing it by accident. Anyway, but I do think there's something to be said. You have the option for selling stuff that's good for people instead of stuff that tricks them. And at any rate, that's our approach. And I would choose that approach even if I made less money. I, in fact, think you make more. It reminds me of Warren Buffett's favorite saying. He says, you should always take the high road as it's less crowded. And that's the system. I think the politics of the country are weirdly awful because of the excesses of hatred that you see everywhere. In California, with the gerrymandered House of Representatives, they have the only danger of getting tossed out of the legislature is if you're a leftist, somebody to the left of you may come in. If you're a rightist, somebody to the right of you may come into the primary. And this creates an awful legislature where the individuals hate each other. And there maybe will be 10 sort of sensible Republicans and 10 kind of sensible Democrats in the California legislature, and every 10 years, these nutcases of the right and left get together and throw all the sensible people out by gerrymandering them out, because they all agree that the people in their own party that are near the middle are horrible. Well, that is a crazy way to be governed, and it is not pretty, and I have no solution. It's just interesting. Warren said to me the other day, he said, it's so interesting now, he says, I would like to stay around for another 30 years if I couldn't participate, if I could just watch. And I said, I'd sign up for that too. It is very interesting. It's weird. And think of how different television is when Cronkite is gone and we have all these clowns on the opinion service lying to us in a very shrewd way. And they're really good at it. You know, the ability to mislead people is greatly underestimated. Any good magician can make anybody see a lot of things happening that aren't happening and not see a lot of things happening that are happening. And of course, we're all dealing with various people who, through practice evolution, have been good at misleading us. And so it is very, very hard to be rational and to stay sane. Of course, that's part of the reason that some of the companies that I've been affiliated with have been successful. It's not that we're so smart, it's that we stayed sane. Because a lot of what goes on is absolutely nuts. And we all see it in politics, of course. It's even sillier than it is in business. Although sometimes we businessmen try and get into our share of the stupidity. And you people come from all over the world to this thing out of some deep hunger. I regard you as nerds because I was once one of you, and I know a nerd when I see one. And you come here because some fellow nerd has managed to succeed despite his defects, and you need a similar result. And you know something that's really odd is you're right. If you could learn some of our tricks, you can get more success out of life than you deserve. That's what's happened to me. And how did it happen? I tell you how it happened. It's obvious that I got better life outcomes than I deserved based on energy or intellect. And of course, that's an interesting process, and everybody would like more of it. Who doesn't like to get a lot more than one deserves? And I stumbled into a few mental tricks early in life, and I just used them over and over again. I mean, I take the high road because it's less crowded. Of course, that's a smart thing to do. And then I feel that I was raised by people who thought it was a moral duty to be as rational as you could possibly make yourself. And that notion, which was just inherited basically from my genes and my surroundings, has served me enormously well. It's like Kipling said, you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs. It's a big advantage. And just think of all the dumb things that are done by our politicians and our business leaders, and the wretched excess you see in the system, and I can remember one of the earlier crazy booms that caused one of our earlier recessions. All these traders would go to Las Vegas and people would hand them free stacks of chips, and they had strippers, and that was our securities market. I mean, it was grossly awful. And a lot goes on now that is grossly awful. Imagine politicians who never understood Adam Smith. It would be like hiring an engineer to design your airplane when he didn't believe in gravity. Well, I laugh too, but there are tears in my laughter. But this business of being determinedly rational does work. You just keep everlastingly at it, because it's harder to say sane than is all credible. Of course, one of the things that's wrong with the present system is the way the heads get cabbaged up by the activity, and the owners of the heads don't know what's happening. One of my favorite actors when I was young was Sir Cedric Hartwick, who was such a good British actor. He was knighted by his monarch. Sir Cedric Hartwick got old, and of course, he kept acting right on and on and on. And toward the end of his life, he made one of the great statements in the history of acting. He said, "I have been a great actor for so long that I no longer know what I truly think on any subject." If you stop to think about it, that's exactly what's happened to most of our politicians, except they don't know it. Sir Cedric Hartwick at least knew his brain had been turned to cabbage, whereas our politicians, they like cabbage. Anyway, and of course, the young people that want to shout out their resentment of this and that, I always say what they're doing is pounding it in. Nobody's listening to them when they shout out. They're just pounding a lot of nonsense in. It's a big mistake to pretend to practically anything, because you become what you pretend to be. Now, sometimes that works. I knew a couple of no-goodniks in my youth who became leading philanthropists, and they did it just to mislead people. But after they'd done it for a while, they became legitimate philanthropists. And that always gave me the conclusion that hypocrisy really is better than most people think. It does change you to constantly pretend one thing and another. And of course, it changes you to say something repeatedly. I always felt that Ronald Reagan, who shifted from Democrat to Republican, his acting career failed, and he was hired by General Electric to run around and give right-wing speeches. Of course, he became a Republican. But in a world where that's the way your own mind tricks you, of course, if you have some prophylactic measures where you're more cautious about your views, think of how we'd all love to have a bunch of children who were a little more cautious about their views. I've got some children in the audience. They're, by and large, a pretty good bunch, but if I had my druthers, there's a thing or two I would change. And you can laugh, but that's the way life works. Well, it's enough of ruminations of one. Imagine coming to listen to some 96-year-old man. Amazing. I'll take questions now from anybody. Go ahead. We'll probably have to wait for a microphone. We have microphones, Jerry?
Hello? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Munger, Bill Brewster here. Thanks for doing this. In the past, you've referred to value investors as a group of cod fishermen and suggested that they maybe fish in a different pond. Conversely, you've also discussed how over a long enough time frame, an investor's realized return would mirror the business's return. So given that many of the highest quality businesses are in the U.S., wouldn't some of our time be best focused analyzing the quality of the businesses here in the U.S.? And I understand that the odds offered on the bet matters a lot, so I'd be curious to hear in your mind how you weigh the quality of the horse versus the odds offered on the horse? Thank you.
Well, both are important, but basically all investment is value investment in the sense that you're always trying to get better prospects than you're paying for. And so, but you can't look everywhere at once, just any more than you could run a marathon in 12 different states at once. And so you have to have some system of picking some place to look, which is your hunting ground. But you're looking for value in every case. And what is interesting to me is you talk about the U.S. I don't agree with you. I think the strongest companies are not in America. I think the Chinese companies are stronger than ours, and they're growing faster. And I have investments in them, and you don't. And I'm right, and you're wrong. Well, you can laugh, but I just spoke a simple truth. David was here. I saw his face in the audience. He's the most successful investor in the whole damn room. Where does he invest? China. And boy, was he smart to do that. And is he good at it? Oh, that it really helps if you know which hunting ground to look in. In fact, we all do better hunting when we're hunting where the hunting is easy. I have a friend who's a fisherman. He says, I have a simple rule for success in fishing. Fish where the fish are. That's you want to fish where the bargains are. That's simple. If the fishing is really lousy where you are, you should probably look for another place to fish. Somebody else?
Dear Mr. Munger, my name is Vishal Patel. I'm a portfolio manager from Toronto, Canada, working for Dynamic Funds. It's my third year here, and I love coming back each year. I want to thank you for your time. Over the years, you've shared lots of comments about India and China. I would love to hear any and all insights you have about your friendly neighbors to the north, whether it's our Canadian political system, banking system, housing sector, resources industry, healthcare system. Any and all insights, wisdom on Canada would be much appreciated.
Well, I'm glad you give me this opportunity. I'm very partial to Canada, and I think their socialized medicine system I think they're wise to have it. And I think they're wise to pay their pharmaceutical prices instead of ours. And I think it's wonderful that we've gotten along with Canada so well all these years. And no, I think you should be quite pleased with Canada. I don't think it helped you to have two different languages spoken. That was an unfortunate accident. But I basically like Canada, and I think in some ways you do better than we do.
Good morning, Mr.
Jerry points out that we have customers in Canada. He's encouraging me. Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Munger. R.J. Manuelian. I'm an attorney just like yourself, following in your footsteps,
I'm
currently
an
investing.
ex-attorney.
I had a question regarding investing. With computers and artificial intelligence rapidly getting better at investing than humans, what should analysts and portfolio managers in the investment management industry do to remain competitive? Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question. I think what people in the investment management industry ought to do is prepare for tougher times ahead. I think this indexing thing is going to run and run and run, and I think that there are wretched excesses in a lot of the well-paid hedge fund and private equity businesses that will in due time result in a lot of troubles that give pain. So everywhere I see the endowment managers have the same mantra. They want fewer and better investment managers. That's not going to be good for investment managers. And the rest of the people are indexing. Now, do you want any other cheery news? cheery news is that if you think the way we nerds think and keep at it long enough, you'll do all right. But if you go with this crowd, I think there's pain ahead.